Hello class. Today we will be talking about POP3 and SMTP. With Ubuntu, this is just a POP3 summary. It's also called Dovecot. Dovecot is a mail delivery service, also known as an MDA. It maintains index files of the mailbox constantly, making it fast, lightweight, and memory efficient. It also sorts incoming mail into the mailbox, and it is used to connect an email client to have the mail actually delivered. The opposite of an MDA is an MTA, the mail transfer agent, which is responsible for sending and receiving emails between your domain and others. With POP3, it creates copies of emails and deletes the originals from the computer. And it is the most popular email protocol used today. The emails are tied to a specific machine and cannot be accessed by any webmail or any other separate clients from any other computers. Next is the hardening recommendations and best practices. With Dovecot, you should link it with an open SSL, which is the secure sockets layer for complete transport layer security. Using multiple file locking mechanisms like .lock and flock allowed Dovecot to be safely used with mailbox shared with NFS, the network file system. And it also supports POP3 and IMAP proxy sessions. My apologies, I'm sick. These two features offer flexibility in large-scale installations, but not necessarily home computers or small offices. And with Dovecot, you want to authenticate usernames and passwords, and this can be done two ways. The first, the plain mechanism, which all clients support. The mail clients send the password to the server totally unencrypted. And there was a typo there on the PowerPoint. I'm very sorry. But in the second, Dovecot uses either Cram MD5 or Digest MD5 to offer encryption with the MD5 algorithm. Not all clients support these authentication mechanisms, but they require you to store the password in a special form or in plain text files. And if you must use the plain authentication, you should be able to provide only SSL encrypted IMAPs or POP3's services to prevent people with malicious intent to eavesdrop on your passwords being sent through the server. Other hardening recommendations include restricting submissions to distribution lists and users, restricts who can send email messages to an individual user or a distribution list, restricting submissions prevents non-trusted senders such as unauthorized internet users from sending email to an internal only distribution list. The next thing you should do is digitally sign and encrypt your email. Prevents anyone from intercepting and reading your email, and make sure it is only opened by the person you sent the message to. Last but not least, you should, and definitely not actually last, there are many more things you could do, but educate users who are using the server to not open emails with attachments from unknown users. Should be common sense, but people sometimes don't necessarily listen to their common sense, so the need for reminding employees is necessary. Next is the Ubuntu postfix, which is the SMTP. It's called postfix and is a mail transfer agent, as explained earlier. It's used to route and deliver email on a Linux system. It is included in Ubuntu's default repositories, which makes installation pretty easy and simple. A few hardening steps to ensure that the SMTP is secure is to ensure that postfix is running with a non-root account. And I included all the code here for you to look at, and there's some more information online as well. These are not the only ones, but the next one is making sure that it's configured to trusted networks. Don't want any untrusted networks to be able to access the SMTP. Configure the network interface addresses that postfix should listen on, and limiting denial of service attacks, which is one of the top priorities, should be anyway, by defaulting limits such as message size, header size, connection rates, and connection counts. Alright, the next slide. For the Windows Server 2012, the IIS, which is the Internet Information Server. It's an extensible web server that supports HTTPS, FTPS, SMTP, and NNTP. It has to be downloaded through the Server Manager dashboard, which you can find from the search bar on the Windows Server. And there are also instructions for this online, how-tos. Do not run the IIS on a domain controller or a backup domain controller, because this limits security options, and new exploits can compromise the entire network. When IIS 8 is composed of more than 40 modules, which allow you to add, which can be added and removed as many as you need or as little as you need, but don't have too much that you can't handle. You want to remove unused ones, and the handlers, often whoever is not accessing the server as much as they're supposed to. Next, you want to restrict IP addresses for remote users. It allows you to selectively allow or deny access to files, folders, websites, and the web server. It's usually advisable to configure connection restriction at the lowest level in the OSI model. This prevents a misconfiguration in a lower level component from allowing a hacker to bypass a higher level restriction. Next, you want to use request filtering, which enables a configurable set of rules that allows you to determine which type of request should be allowed or denied for the website or web server. It can allow for requests for a specific namespace. It can also filter by HTTP file extension, request limit, and the URL sequence. Next is a application pool configuration. This is useful when an administrator needs to accept content from external parties. Um, if multiple application pools run as the same identity, then code running inside one pool will clash with another application, with other pool file systems, and you want to prevent this by introducing the application pool configuration. So each application pool will have its own configuration file. That way there's complete isolation between them to ensure that any malicious site cannot harm the other site in a server environment where more than one site is actually being deployed. Usually if one site is compromised, the rest will also be compromised. The last thing you want to do is logging configuration. Actually, going back to pool configuration. Oh, I'm sorry, actually, never mind. But with logging, logs offer proof of breach and help identify the approach to which the hacker was able to gain access to the server. Most of the time using denial of service attacks. Periodically logging activities and auditing them to detect possible traces of malicious activity is a good way to harden your SMTP. And all important information is logged, including the logging time, password guessing attempts, and etc. And that is the end. Thank you for listening.